My first question I wanted to ask you is what's been motivating you to go down this rabbit hole of investigation of the nature of left media? I mean, it's obvious that we are left media content creators. Is it
Mhm.
a frustration with the enterprise in and of itself?
Mhm.
Do you find that there's sometimes something that we are failing to disclose about what we see in this world? I mean, I can definitely tell you there are, I think that the expectations of the audiences and the reality of what the content creators can produce is the
Mhm.
biggest gap I see in reality for me.
What do you mean as far as what the content creator can
Yeah,
produce?
I just think that the expectation that you have people who are sitting at home on their YouTube streams to are trying to produce some kind of news content that they're going to be 24/7 like stomping the barricades ready for revolution. It's kind of ridiculous.
Um, I- I- the original title, I forget actually what the original title for that piece was. That was actually something that I wrote a little over a year ago. And I reworked a lot of it, and not a lot of it, I reworked some of it, and we republished it in Sublation because I thought it was, pretty relevant to some things that I saw going on. Um, what kind of motivated me to revisit that was that, first of all, we had gotten tagged on something, another piece I wrote that had nothing to do with anything. Ben Burgess had shared it because he actually helped me edit it. Somebody made some insults to him, but I was tagged on it and I saw it. And it's just kind of this ridiculous thing I was looking at. And it just made me think that I feel the way people digest media, kind of like the reason why I made kayfabe,
Mhm.
was the way we digest media is in such a way that nuance is gone and it's all about real overly simplistic binary narratives. And to your point about the kind of storming of the barricade style of, I don't want to say journalism, but edutainment, if you will. um I think it all comes out of people chasing a market share more than I think it's people being dishonest. Um, I did actually, when I wrote the piece, I did watch the film The Grifters. I quote the Grifters in the original piece. I think I was able to quote it in the redo on Sublation, but and I watched that movie last night actually, with a friend that had never seen it, and she was, she had never seen it, and it's an older film. It's from like what, 92, 93, and she was aghast at that movie because the characters in it are so despicable, and they all live very, very solitary lives because the life of a con artist is a very lonely one. And I don't think even commentators who I'm not a fan of at all, I think a lot of the stuff they say is trash. I don't think they're con artists. You know what I mean? I just think they're all chasing um, a very, very, very small market. When you look at some of these videos that we joke about in the champagne room, these people that post videos like that have millions of followers. Like I showed you that one guy that does the kind of fake things where he agitates black people in the inner city. That guy has 4 YouTube channels with over a million followers each, grasping a much larger audience. And you look at the larger channels in our world, it's like Majority Report and Jimmy Dore, and those are super, super small compared to kind of the greater scale of media, and everyone is trying to take eyeballs away from this super small audience. So, you know, I guess be more radical might be uh, their ethos and what they're doing. But what we find is that when you engage in name calling, views go up because this is still reality TV for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't want to admit that. So when the name calling happens about other shows, you know, you don't need to do any research for that. You don't need to do any creative production work for that. You just, call somebody a name, and and then kind of move out the way and let it do its work.
Well, you know what's really interesting also is I think that a lot of what we're seeing in the way people react to online media is a consequence of the frustration that people have with mainstream media, in
Mhm.
that mainstream media is so unable to reflect the political wherewithal or wishes of what the body politic is interested in seeing because it's largely about representing the interests of capital. That's just the nature of which the way in which corporate media works.
Mhm.
So that when people find online media that is supposedly more independent of those forces, they become overly emotional in their attachment, and I think they become a little bit more divorced from the realities of their expectation, and they become more personalized in terms of how close they become to this person who is basically just conveying them information, political education, or news.
Mhm.
I think it creates a certain kind of vicious cycle that makes it hard for people to realize. They're like, yo, listen, why are you getting so personally invested in someone who is just trying to give you a political education?
Well, I don't know. Well, before I answer, Tucson, do you have something you'd like to add to that?
No, I think I'll
Take your answer
set
off there.
I'll set up my question a bit later.
Take it.
I don't want to
Um,
piggyback.
the way I see it, and this is just my opinion, I was a fan for since a little child of sports talk radio, and it used to be insightful. And I hate to be that kind of in my day things were better. I still think there's some insightful things in sports media, but there's kind of a Jim Rome, Howard Sternification of the way just media is produced in general. So people really have to be abrasive to get ears and eyeballs on what they're doing. So there's also like a real abrasive nature about the way people are approaching what they're doing. And I think that lends itself to the idea as well of so and so is a con man. And saying grifter starts to have its own little meaning. But when you say con man, it even sounds a little different because you're like, well, what is the con? That's my thing I always say is, well, what is the con and where is the financial payoff? I mean, we don't have to get into super duper raw numbers for this show, but it barely gets by. And Gene Bajlan always makes the jokes that no white person is paid on this show, and he's extremely right. They're not, mainly because we can't afford it.
But isn't there money somewhere? White people are getting paid somewhere on the left
The people,
and here.
it's like anything else. The people that got in when everything blew up got paid, right? So 2016, 2015, if you got in during Sanders and Trump, you got paid. If you got in around COVID time, like this show really kind of becomes a bigger thing during the shelter in place, even though it was started beforehand. All jokes aside, um, maybe you're doing okay, but those people that got in early built kind of massive followings. You know, look at Chapo, for example. They get in early, and you're not going to see another one of those. I don't think. Do you guys disagree or disagree?
I don't think the politics of what is considered the left allow something like Chapo to happen again.
That
Maybe
moment has passed.
that moment, yeah, that moment is just past. But people are
The
looking for,
politics of that moment has passed.
Right.
yeah. And you know, getting to meet those guys actually and in person was actually kind of nice when I got to speak at UC Irvine a few months ago. Um, and I think I actually said that at Irvine. I think I said that the moment for those guys has passed, and they kind of realize it, and they are all doing very very different projects, and they're able to do more interesting things. I think. Um,
Can I interrupt you?
please.
We have a super chat from the letter hack.
Hmm.
People don't want to eat their veggies. Jean Bajlan. That is 100% a Jean Bajlan statement. But I also wanted to point out someone else's comment in the chat.
Mhm.
We said that moment has gone. Defective Sony DVD says it'll come back around. What do you think of that?
Nope.
I disagree with that.
I think it's gone. I think that moment for someone to grab that level of attention, kind of, I don't want to say that quickly because it did take a little bit of time for those guys to build that stuff up,
Sure,
but
yeah.
it's just gone.
And I think that the failure of that particular moment to materialize into some real politics has made people profoundly cynical. I actually think that part of the problem we have with this moment is the massive cynicism that exists amongst people who were formerly on the left or progressives who were supporting that kind of Bernie Sanders politics, how they became so disenchanted with the fact that nothing materialized. And I think it bred a serious cynicism.
Do you think that was the point?
I don't think that was the point. I think there was an unintended consequence.
You don't think that when the powers that be got together and made all those calls and stopped Bernie,
they're gonna
that
kill the podcast sphere.
kill the podcast, kill the millennial left? Ha ha ha! We finally got him.
Do I think the Democratic Party accidentally killed the millennial left? Yes.
Accidentally.
Yes.
You're
I definitely do.
quite
I think they thought
generous.
it could. I think they thought it could be like Obama.
And they could roll them in.
Like we'll just roll them in like we did in 2008, and they'll be one of us. One of us.
So
one
naive.
of us.